The southwest of Western Australia is one of 34 international biodiversity hotspots recognised by Conservation International and the only one in Australia. The southwest hotspot occupies 356,000 kilometres squared and includes the Southwest Botanical Province. This hotspot is mainly made up of eucalyptus forests, banksia woodlands, and a range of heathlands and shrublands. There are over 5,500 described plant species, of which 53% are only found in the southwest of Western Australia. The region includes many rare flora, rare fauna, and threatened ecological communities. Much of the biodiversity of the hotspot can be attributed to millions of years of isolation from the rest of Australia by the country's vast central deserts. Extreme climate shifts and poor soils have resulted in specialisation of the region's flora and fauna. With threats to native vegetation, such as salinity and erosion, feral animals, and the possible impacts of climate change, these special areas are under threat. But probably the most devastating and immediate threat is from an introduced plant disease called Phytophthora Dieback. The introduction of Phytophthora Dieback into the southwest of Western Australia is a disaster of global significance. The pathogen which causes this devastating plant disease, Phytophthora cinnamomi, was introduced into Western Australia, South Australia, Victoria, Tasmania, and New South Wales at the time of European settlement. It's believed the first settlers brought the pathogen in the soil and plant material of rootstocks to establish the first orchards in WA. Jarrah timber was a major commercial timber for Western Australia, so the death of these trees was a major economic concern. The disease was named Jarrah Dieback. In 1959, the disease had been recognised at 33 locations, or approximately 0.2% of the Jarrah forest. It was only in 1965 that Frank Podger, with the assistance of George Zettmeyer, described the cause of this Jarrah forest collapse as Phytophthora cinnamomi. The identification resulted in significant increased understanding of the biology of the plant disease, and by the 1970s, hygiene and quarantine protocols were being applied during mining and forestry activities within the Jarrah forest. The first recognition of Phytophthora dieback in the Jarrah forest and the naming of the disease as Jarrah dieback has resulted in a number of major misconceptions. Many people believe Jarrah is the only susceptible species and the disease is only in the Jarrah forest. However, Jarrah is only one of more than 2,200 native plants affected in Western Australia. The disease is widespread from Jurien to the north of Perth to past Esperance to the southeast of the state. The disease is also widespread across bushland and gardens in the Perth metropolitan region. In 2008, Project Dieback estimated that over 1 million hectares in the southwest is infested with Phytophthora dieback. Many iconic locations are currently being impacted by the pathogen, including the Stirling Ranges, Albany, Margaret River, Dunsborough, Mount Leger, Jurien, Walpole, and the International Biosphere Reserve, the Fitzgerald River National Park.
The main impact on wildfire has been this area over here where we've got a slope, and that means that when it rains we get the Phytophthora running through the soil down the hill, and it's infected a whole lot of the plants down that slope. And because Phytophthora infects Banksia and Jarrah, and this is a Banksia and Jarrah woodland, it has badly affected those plants here and up to 40% of the other species in the park as well. That means we've had quite a lot of plant deaths, and when that happens we have the canopy loss, means that we can get a lot more weeds growing. The main weed we have at Wildtail is veldgrass, and so what happens then is that we have an increased fire load, And occasionally, unfortunately, people do light fires in the park, usually not a natural fire, but arson. And then we will have quite a hot fire, which damages even further, of course, the trees and the plants that we do have. And that leads to a loss of biodiversity and a loss of habitat for the animals and birds that live here.
Phytophthora are a group of water moulds that have been associated with significant plant disease epidemics around the world. There are a number of different Phytophthora species found in the southwest of Western Australia, but Phytophthora cinnamomi is the most destructive. Although the pathogen can spread through the soil on its own via water movement and between plants by root-to-root contact, the biggest risk of new infestation comes from us. Living in the soil, dieback zoospores move naturally through soil water. They are chemically attracted to the roots of plants, and it's from here they invade the infected plant's root system. This causes the roots to rot, starving the plants of vital water and nutrients. Death amongst susceptible species can occur within a few weeks. Despite the pathogen being able to lie dormant for several years, the Phytophthora Dieback spores thrive in warm, moist conditions. When these occur, the disease is extremely active and can spread rapidly. Humans can spread the disease in many ways. Soil sticks to boots, vehicles, and machinery. And if that soil contains the pathogen and is moved into healthy native plant communities, its impact on biodiversity can be devastating. Dieback fronts often originate from contaminated roads and tracks and can sometimes be seen clearly moving through bushland, especially when viewed from the air. It's not just native plants, but animals that rely on these plants for food or shelter which can disappear from infested areas. Phytophthora dieback also kills common plants like roses, camellias, avocados and citrus trees, and can survive happily in your garden. The impact of Phytophthora dieback is a substantial cost to government and industry in Western Australia. Local governments and major utilities such as Western Power and Main Roads have developed management procedures to minimise the spread. Local government authorities across the southwest in particular are implementing effective dieback management practices, which is critical to the long-term sustainability of natural bushland in these areas. These practices have included minimising the number of bushland tracks and restricting access to uninfested areas, the use of educational signage, the installation of cleaning stations for vehicles and boots at the entry of uninfested areas, the scheduling of activities for dry soil conditions, measures for controlling drainage in bushland areas, and also the use of dieback-free soil, gravel and plants.
Yeah, the Shire of Mundaring has 44,000 hectares of native vegetation, and basically that means that about 50% of that's protected in water catchment area and state forest, and the other 48% is actually on private property, which is really important for the Shire of Mundaring because it means the public needs to manage that. So there's a lot of prime hunting ground for Phytophthora dieback in the Shire of Mundaring. Yeah, the Shire of Mundaring holds regular workshops, Bush Skills for the Hills, and we basically do information on dieback with that. We also map reserves when resources are available, and we do partnerships with our local TAFE students and our Green Corps where we go out and do preventative treatments in the bushland reserves that we have. Yeah, the community is a big help to the Shire of Mundaring with dieback treatment. We have 5 catchment groups and about 80 friends groups, and they hold regular dieback treatment working days. We also have residents that ring in and ask for information on dieback. And with giving the information and education to the residents about dieback, they then take our do-it-yourself kits back to their properties, and they have a go at trying the preventative treatment on their properties and protecting the native vegetation.
In managing the spread of dieback, Western Australia's plant nursery industry has now developed an accreditation scheme for production nurseries. It's a good idea before buying plants from a nursery to ask if the plant was produced from a NIASA accredited nursery. This accreditation shows that the nursery has used materials and methods that will minimise the risk of distributed plants or potting mix containing dieback. The good news is you can help us prevent the human spread of this devastating disease in this unique area. Dieback can mostly be confined to existing areas by not moving soil or plant material from infested areas. When driving, stick to dry, well-formed roads and steer clear of mud and water, as this is the safest way to travel without spreading dieback. When going into a new area, we need to make sure we are not bringing in the disease. Think about where you have come from and if the area could have been infested. As a precaution, any soil should be washed or brushed down from your boots and vehicle undercarriage before entering new areas. This includes bikes. Once your footwear and equipment is free of soil, a cheap and easy way to ensure it is free of dieback is to spray with 70% methylated spirits. However, the best way to minimise the risk of picking up infected soil is to only go out into natural areas in dry conditions. Phytophthora Dieback is the biggest threat to the biodiversity hotspot of the southwest of Western Australia. Our major concern is that so many plant species are susceptible to Phytophthora Dieback. Iconic areas such as the Stirling Ranges are being devastated by the disease. In Perth, it has the potential to kill the banksia trees that are the dominant tree species. Without these keystone species, the entire ecological community will change for the worse. The good news is that we know how to map the presence of the pathogen, and we can successfully manage it if appropriate procedures are introduced and followed. The challenge for us is to responsibly use our bushland and not spread Phytophthora Dieback. If we stop the spread of this disease, we will protect our bushland for generations to come.